Let me ask you something. Two people can grow up on the same street, attend the same schools, get the same opportunities handed to them as adults, and 20 years later, one of them is financially free and the other is still living paycheck to paycheck. Same information, same access, wildly different outcomes. So why does that happen so often that it stops looking like coincidence? The answer is uncomfortable. And Harv Eker gives it directly in one of the most widely read books ever written on the psychology of money. He says your financial results are not primarily determined by what you know about money. They are determined by a program running quietly in the back of your mind, installed in childhood, long before you ever earned a paycheck or made a real financial decision. He calls this your money blueprint. He argues that most people try to fix their finances by learning new strategies, budgeting tighter, working harder. And it rarely works for long, because you are trying to change the output while leaving the underlying program exactly as it was installed. Give 10 different people the exact same amount of money, he argues, and within a short period of time, most of them will return to whatever level their blueprint was set to. Not because of bad luck, because of a pattern operating below conscious awareness. This is why lottery winners so often end up back where they started within a few years, and why some people who lose everything rebuild it again within a surprisingly short time. The number in the bank account moved. The underlying blueprint that produced it in the first place did not, and it quietly pulled the number back toward wherever it was originally set. In this video, I am going to walk you through 8 of the core wealth files Eker identifies in this book. Not just what they are, but why they form. Why capable, intelligent people carry a blueprint working against them without ever noticing. And what actually changing it looks like. This is not a comfortable video. Some of what you are about to hear will sound less like finance and more like psychology, because that is exactly what it is. But if you have ever wondered why financial success seems to come easily to some people and stay permanently out of reach for others despite equal effort, what you are about to hear might finally explain why. Stay with me. Wealth File 1. Rich people believe I create my life. Poor people believe life happens to me. This is the foundational split Eker returns to again and again. One person sees their financial results as something they generated through decisions, habits, and choices, even the unconscious ones. Another person sees their financial results as something that happened to them, caused by the economy, their employer, their upbringing, or plain bad luck. Eker does not deny that circumstances are real and sometimes genuinely unfair. What he argues is that the belief you hold about your own role in your results determines whether you look for what you can control. If life simply happens to you, there is nothing to examine and nothing to change. If you created your results, even partly, there is something to look at, and that is where actual change becomes possible. The specific problem with the victim position is that it feels true, and it protects you from responsibility at the exact moment responsibility would be most useful. Blaming external forces is comfortable. It is also, according to Eker, the single most reliable way to guarantee your financial situation never improves. Eker is careful to separate this from blame. He is not arguing that every hardship is self-inflicted or that unfair circumstances do not exist. He is arguing that regardless of how much of your situation was genuinely outside your control, the only useful place to stand is the part you can still influence. Standing anywhere else feels justified. It also guarantees nothing changes. Wealth File 2. Rich people play the money game to win. Poor people play the money game not to lose. Most people are taught, explicitly or by example, to prioritize financial safety. Keep your job. Do not take unnecessary risks. Protect what you have. Eker draws a sharp distinction between playing to win and playing not to lose. Playing not to lose means your primary goal is avoiding loss, so you make choices designed to minimize downside, even when those same choices cap your upside just as effectively. Playing to win means your primary goal is building genuine wealth, which requires a different relationship with risk entirely, not recklessness, but a willingness to move toward opportunity instead of only away from danger. The specific mechanism is subtle. A person playing not to lose will often turn down a genuinely good opportunity because it carries any visible risk at all, while a person playing to win evaluates the same opportunity by weighing the risk against the reward. Over decades, these two orientations produce dramatically different financial lives, even when both people work equally hard. This does not mean the playing to win approach ignores risk. It means risk is treated as one input among several, rather than the deciding factor by default. The person playing not to lose has already answered the question before evaluating the opportunity. The person playing to win actually does the evaluation. Wealth File 3. Rich people are committed to being rich. Poor people want to be rich. Wanting to be rich and being committed to being rich feel similar from the inside. Eker argues they produce completely different behavior. Wanting is compatible with giving up the moment things get difficult. It is a preference, not a decision. Commitment changes what happens when the plan fails, when the market turns, when the first attempt does not work. A committed person treats failure as information and adjusts. A person who merely wants the outcome treats the same failure as proof that it was not meant to be and quietly returns to their previous financial pattern. The test Eker offers is simple. When things get hard, what actually happens? If the answer is that you find another way, that is commitment. If the answer is that you find a reason to stop, that was only ever a preference wearing the language of a goal. This matters because most financial setbacks are not actually fatal. They only become fatal when they are treated as a signal to stop rather than a signal to adjust. The difference between the two people is rarely the size of the setback. It is what each of them decided the setback meant. Wealth File 4. Rich people think big. Poor people think small. Small thinking feels responsible. Aim for what seems realistic. Do not overreach. Set expectations you are confident you can meet. Eker's argument is that the size of the goal itself shapes the size of the effort, the resources, and the creativity a person brings to a problem. A small goal recruits small effort, because small effort feels sufficient to reach it. A genuinely large goal forces a person to think differently, because the old small thinking approach is visibly inadequate to the size of the target. This does not mean setting goals with no relationship to reality. It means recognizing that thinking small is not actually safer. It simply guarantees a small result, with total reliability, while producing the comfortable feeling of being realistic. There is also a practical mechanism behind this. Large goals attract resources, people, and ideas that small goals never encounter, simply because the goal itself changes what a person is willing to attempt, ask for, or build in order to reach it. Shrinking the target in advance shrinks everything that follows from it. Wealth File 5. Rich people focus on opportunities. Poor people focus on obstacles. Every situation, viewed honestly, contains both. A market downturn contains real danger and real opportunity simultaneously. A difficult economy closes some doors and opens others. Eker argues that where your attention defaults to, under pressure, without conscious effort, reveals your blueprint more clearly than almost anything else. A person whose blueprint is built around scarcity will notice the obstacle first, reflexively, and treat the opportunity as an afterthought, if they notice it at all. A person whose blueprint is built around abundance does the reverse. This is not blind optimism. It is a trained habit of attention. The specific danger of obstacle focus is that it becomes self-confirming. Once you are scanning for what could go wrong, you find it reliably, and the opportunity sitting beside it goes unnoticed simply because you were never looking there. The reverse is equally true, and Eker treats this as trainable rather than fixed. Deliberately asking in any difficult situation where the opportunity is hiding does not eliminate the obstacle. It simply ensures you are no longer blind to the half of the situation that scarcity thinking habitually filters out. Wealth File 6. Rich people admire other rich and successful people. Poor people resent rich and successful people. This is one of the most uncomfortable wealth files in the book, because it asks the listener to examine a reaction that often happens automatically. Seeing someone else's financial success and feeling a flicker of resentment, or the quiet thought that they must have gotten lucky, or cut corners, or been unfair to reach it. Eker's argument is direct. Resentment toward wealth is resentment toward the thing you claim to want. You cannot become something you are simultaneously judging as suspect or undeserved. Admiration, by contrast, keeps the door open. It allows you to study what someone else did without the interference of judgment clouding what you are actually able to learn from them. This does not mean every wealthy person acted admirably in earning what they have. It means that the automatic, blanket resentment many people carry toward wealth in general quietly closes off the exact information that could move them closer to it. There is a quieter cost to this pattern as well. Resentment tends to be sensed by the people you would most benefit from learning from. A mentor, a successful colleague, a potential partner rarely opens up fully to someone whose underlying posture toward their success is suspicion. Admiration keeps doors open that resentment closes before you even notice them shutting. Wealth File 7. Rich people choose to get paid based on results. Poor people choose to get paid based on time. Most financial advice and most employment is built around time. Trade hours for a wage. Predictable, safe, and capped by definition. Eker points to a different structure entirely. Getting paid for results rather than hours removes the ceiling, because results are not limited to 24 hours in a day the way labor is. A person paid by results can improve their outcome by working smarter, building something that produces value without their constant presence, or simply becoming more effective at what they do, none of which is possible when the paycheck is tied strictly to time. This is not a claim that every job should become commission-based overnight. It is an observation about where genuinely large financial outcomes tend to come from, and why a mindset anchored entirely in trading hours for pay tends to produce an income with a hard, permanent ceiling. Even within traditional employment, Eker argues, the same principle applies at a smaller scale. The employee who focuses on producing measurable results, rather than simply logging hours, tends to become the one whose compensation eventually detaches from the clock entirely, through promotions, bonuses, or equity that time-focused colleagues rarely see offered to them. Wealth File 8. Rich people have their money work hard for them. Poor people work hard for their money. This is in many ways the summary wealth file, the one the previous 7 all point toward. One person's income depends entirely on their continued personal effort. Stop working, and the income stops with them. Eker argues that the goal is building the second kind of relationship with money as early as possible, where invested capital, income-generating assets, and systems produce results independent of your daily labor. The specific insight is that this shift does not require enormous starting capital. It requires a decision, made early, to treat a portion of every dollar earned as a worker you are hearing, rather than money you have finished dealing with the moment you spend or save it. The person who never makes this shift can work extremely hard their entire life and still end their career with nothing generating income on their behalf. The person who makes it, even modestly, ends up with assets doing quiet work in the background, whether or not they are personally at their desk that day. Now let us be honest about this book. Eker is a compelling and energetic writer, and the core insight of this book, that unconscious beliefs about money shape financial behavior more than raw information does, is genuinely valuable and supported by a reasonable body of behavioral research on financial psychology. His gift is making that insight memorable and immediately applicable, but the book has real limitations worth nomming. Many of Eker's specific claims about childhood conditioning are presented with more confidence than the underlying evidence actually supports. The book was also written, in part, as an extended introduction to his paid seminars, and the affirmations and declarations it recommends can feel more like marketing technique than rigorous psychological method. Some readers find real, lasting value in the mindset shifts described here. Others find the tone repetitive and the promises of transformation oversold relative to what a book alone can realistically deliver. None of this makes the core framework wrong. It makes it a starting point rather than a complete system. A genuinely useful engagement with this book means taking the wealth file concept seriously, examining your own patterns honestly, while treating the specific techniques with the same healthy skepticism you would apply to any single source claiming to hold the full explanation for financial success. It is also worth nomming the survivorship element in how the book is framed. Eker tells his own story of losing everything and rebuilding it, and the book leans heavily on that personal narrative as proof the system works. A single success story, however compelling, is not the same as evidence that the same steps reliably produce the same result for everyone who follows them. The mindset shifts described here are genuinely useful. They are not, on their own, a guarantee. So what do you actually take from this? The most valuable thing this book offers is a specific question to ask yourself about money. What did money actually look like, sound like, and feel like in the household I grew up in? And am I still unconsciously replaying that pattern as an adult? Most people have never asked this directly. They assume their current relationship with money is simply their personality, rather than a program installed decades ago by people who were, themselves, running programs installed in them. The second most valuable thing is the shift from thinking about tactics to thinking about identity. It is not primarily about which specific investment or budgeting method to adopt next. It is about which of these 8 patterns you actually recognize in yourself, and whether you are willing to look at it honestly enough to change it. This is harder than it sounds, because a blueprint installed in childhood does not announce itself as a belief. It simply feels like the way things are. Recognizing it as a pattern rather than a fact about reality is the actual work this book is asking you to do, and no affirmation repeated in a mirror accomplishes that on its own without the honest self-examination underneath it. The third thing is simply this. Your bank account at any given moment is often a reasonably accurate reflection of your money blueprint, not a reflection of your intelligence, your work ethic, or your worth. That distinction matters because it means the number is changeable in a way that intelligence and worth are not, and the place to start changing it is rarely the spreadsheet. It is the pattern sitting quietly underneath it. That is the actual offer of this book. Not a guaranteed formula, not a shortcut. A different set of questions to ask about a program you inherited before you were old enough to choose it. What you do with those questions is entirely up to you. Thanks for watching all the way through. The blueprint only keeps running the same way if you never stop to look at it.